that I got sunshine in a bag. I'm useless, but not for long. The future is coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on, our future.
Drugs make great headlines, and we all love a horror story. But how do you separate fact from fiction? Taking drugs can feel fantastic.
You'd kind of hear people that had done it, and you'd be like, oh, wow, that's quite mad. And I wanted that.
It was just the most amazing rush. It was like all worries, all problems gone out the window.
Or it can be horrific.
I left the police cell, went on back to my dealers to go get drugs.
You know, I sold possessions and stuff to get drugs or drink.
All I cared about were these drugs, nothing else.
It really depends on your state of mind.
I wasn't doing it to look cool or nothing. It was just to treat my feelings.
You know, the drugs gave me confidence.
Ecstasy became like my world, really.
And exactly what you're taking.
32 Rizzlers in a Rizzler pack, and sometimes I went through a pack of Rizzlers in a day.
You know, I'd take up to 7 tablets in a night, which, you know, should be dead, really.
Do it and then think about it later.
The one thing that separates mankind from all the other animals on this planet is the desire to get stoned, basically. And I think what it boils down to is that human beings love making modification to their consciousness. That is, the way they think, the way they feel, the way they react, the way they perceive the world around them. And there's something delicious for most of us, and we all do it, let's face it, tea, coffee, cigarettes, illicit drugs. We all love to change the way our brains work.
Cannabis, amphetamines, cocaine and ecstasy are the drugs you're most likely to come across. Like most people, Hannah tried cannabis first when she was 16 and living in a hostel for young people. Typically, her first experience wasn't a total success.
The first time I ever tried any form of drug was when I first moved into the hostel and I was given some hash cake. And it was quite a weird effect on me. I don't think I particularly enjoyed it, to be honest, because even though I was like constantly giggling, it was like I didn't have any control over it. It was like I couldn't just stop. And I remember trying to eat a sausage roll and I just couldn't eat it because I had like no saliva in my mouth. And I mean, at the time, it probably looked absolutely hilarious to watch, but I just felt really out of control. It was quite embarrassing, really, because, I mean, they always say that, you know, with blokes, they just chill out and mong on the sofa, but with girls, they get really annoying and giggly, and I was annoying and giggly.
Growing up is about doing things and sharing experience, and it's just a natural thing for people to do.
Basically, you're with your mates. What are your mates into? Maybe a little blaze while watching TV. So you have a blaze. Maybe a bit frightening at first, but you get used to it because you're with your mates. And that's the way a lot of people get into drug use. And it's not sinister. It's just really easy, laid back, and not that much of a problem.
Like most things, drugs take some getting used to. And most people's first experience will be embarrassing, a bit scary, or maybe simply an anticlimax. It's just as well most people try drugs for the first time with good mates.
I started smoking cigarettes, hanging about with the older lads at school, and when they left school, went to do their GCSEs, they literally dragged me off in the woods one day and just said, "This is our leaving present, Neil." And they pulled out a big lump of hash, and I didn't think twice about it. They kind of just proceeded to get me stoned, really, and I liked it. I can't remember feeling bad. I can't remember getting any buzz from the hash smoking. I just remember kind of walking across the field and feeling good about myself and feeling like I don't know, cool, really, and kind of like a big man. I can't believe that I'm showing this picture. I found it the other day, you know, and this is my old bus pass for school, and it's dated 1994 when I was 14, and so I was just starting to smoke hash then. I look quite innocent, you know, I look a bit feminine, which I don't like, but I don't know, you know, I'm a schoolboy, and that's it, really. But that was just, you know, the beginning of my drug taking.
Cannabis is a depressant, which means it slows down the way your brain and body work. That's why when you're stoned, moving from the sofa to the fridge can feel like a triathlon. It's a Class C drug, and many people see it as a harmless, natural substance. But it's still a powerful drug, especially if you're smoking the hybrid skunk.
Is it natural? Is it better than cigarettes? Possibly. However, what everyone's smoking at the moment is skunk. Now, the problem with skunk is all those arguments about cannabis being natural goes out the window with skunk. It's grown hydroponically, it's grown in liquids, it's got sun lamps. Some people, not all, but some people are spraying it with all kinds of rubbish.
People who've had a couple of tokes on a really, really powerful skunk spliff can hear a noise and suddenly realise that's their breathing they're hearing. What they're doing is accentuating their auditory reaction, their ears, to the sound of their own breathing and hallucinating or getting off on the amplified sound, the distorted perception of the sound of their breathing. Similarly, when you're stoned on cannabis, listening to music can sound absolutely sublime. The way things look can seem so rich, so beautiful, so wonderful. So cannabis doesn't only stimulate the emotional parts of the brain, but the perceptual parts of the brain.
If there's not much going on, drugs can make the world seem more interesting. Dan grew up in a small Surrey village called Outwood and decided to make his own entertainment by getting very, very stoned.
First time I tried it, I went to school on the bus with my mate, and he just gave me like about 2 spliffs worth or something like that. And I went home, went upstairs to my bedroom, just rolled these couple of joints, sort of thing. Just started smoking and just entered the drug world as it is on my own, sort of thing.
Let's get high. High. Let's get high. Come on, let's get high.
It was a bit funny. It was like I didn't feel stoned the first time I smoked it, so I went back out again and bought ½ ounce of solid sort of thing, and I'd done that in about a day and a half.
Lots of people who try cannabis never take any other drug, and having a few puffs on a spliff certainly isn't a fast lane to heroin addiction. Those that do try another drug are most likely to take a stimulant, like speed, ecstasy, or cocaine. All these drugs speed up how your mind and body work. And for Hannah, this was a lot more fun than her earlier experiences with cannabis.
When I tried ecstasy, it was something totally new. It was like a conscious decision that I was like, yeah, I'm going to try this now, and I don't care if it kills me. I'm going to try it because it looks like good fun and I can do what I want. So I did that with a group of friends in my room, and I took 3 pills that night, and it was just the most amazing rush. All worries, all problems gone out the window. It kind of went from there, really. It was like, this is something I've really found that I really enjoy. I want to do this all the time.
You got a real party vibe going on with ecstasy. You're up there, you love everybody, you want to talk to everybody, you want to dance all night. It's part of you're part of this community. You're right there, and it's a good feeling.
Look at the molecule of E. Good old-fashioned amphetamine on one hand and an MDMA sidechain on the other. The amphetamine bit gives you the good old-fashioned stimulant effect. Racing thinking, agitation, movement, chewing all the time. But the sidechain seems to affect the part of the brain to do with serotonin, the emotional part of the brain. So you get amphetamine stimulus with a kind of an intense emotional reaction. People refer to it as being loved up.
Cocaine's also a stimulant, but if you're taking it, you're more likely to love yourself than anyone else.
If you take a pill with MDMA or ecstasy, then often people, they're there, they get that sense of euphoria, that rush, that well-being, that pleasure, but it lasts for 4 hours, whereas Coke is very much more about, continually taking another line. It can become quite a selfish drug, actually.
When I say I tried cocaine at 14, going on 15, it was like one line, like half of a little itty-bitty line. But this, to me, was like the coolest, the most grown-up, the most amazing thing in the whole universe. There was nothing more cool than trying this and to be able to say to people, oh, I've tried it. Haven't you?
Pull up to the bumper, get out of the car. License plate is stunner, #1 superstar.
The majority of my family are all blonde and blue-eyed and very little and petite. And then there was me. Brown hair, brown eyes. And I was always chunky. I wasn't fat, I was chunky. And I had a lot of low self-esteem because of the way I looked. And when I did take drugs, they did make me feel, you know, oh no, you know, I'm quite pretty and yes, I'm it, you know, I'm part of the it crowd. I'm cool.
Everybody's waiting for me to arrive. Sending out the message to all of my friends. We'll be looking flashy in my Mercedes Benz.
In the beginning, you know, we would all put our money together, our £5, our £10, our £20, and we would end up maybe between 6 or 8 of us buying 1 gram of cocaine and sharing it. So there wasn't a huge amount, but that would turn out that we'd do that every Friday night and it'd be all exciting and we'd spend the whole week planning it and what we were going to wear and who was going to do whose makeup and who was going to go off and buy the coke and, you know, who was going to carry it and what we'd say if we get caught by the police. You know, there was a lot of like group energy and excitement about this whole experience.
I can go for miles if you know what I mean.
Speed's similar in many ways to cocaine. Again, it'll hit you pretty quickly, but the feeling will last longer, that feeling of excitement and alertness, release of energy, that will stay longer than, say, cocaine would.
Most people swallow or bomb speed, but you can also inject it.
The bloke I was buying hash from, he used to take a lot of speed, and he literally didn't have any cannabis, and he said, try some of this, Neil, and so I did. And the first time I took it, I injected the speed. Now, saying that seems quite extreme, but the people I was hanging about with were doing it. The people in the flat where I was buying hash from, they were all kind of known for doing that. You know, and the truth is, it felt really good. That was the first time in my drug using that I started to keep it a secret from the kind of people I was hanging about with. We used to smoke cigarettes on the school field, and I remember walking up one time and people were, oh, it's Neil, the needles scum. You know, and that started to, I mean, it hurt, but I couldn't let anyone know that, I suppose, and so I just kept taking more.
For most people, drugs are about socialising and having a big night out, and it's very easy to get carried away.
I was already on some pills, maybe 4 pills or something like that, and yeah, I took far too much. I took nearly 1 gram, so I've been told, of coke, and blacked out and got taken to hospital by ambulance.
I think the best way to describe it, it started like the rush from pills, but then it just got more and more and more intense, could feel my heart proper racing and stuff. And I don't remember anything after that, apart from waking up whatever time it was in the hospital. Got out of hospital on the Sunday, probably the Friday night, possibly early hours of the next Saturday morning, did coke again.
It's not just what drug you take that affects your experience, but how you take it. Graham took a massive risk by doing so much coke his first time and by mixing it with ecstasy.
So many young people are taking concoctions of substances. This can lead to all sorts of issues in terms of increasing the effects of the drugs and also leading to consequences that people weren't expecting. It's quite common for people to be taking stimulants whilst they're waiting for the effects of the ecstasy to come up, and then suddenly you might have both coming into effect at the same time.
What you've got to understand is that every drug is telling your heart to do something. So you get some drugs telling your heart to speed up, some telling your heart to slow down. What if you're taking a drug that slows your heart down and you take another drug that wants to speed your heart up? You can get what we call arrhythmia, when it just kind of beats out of time.
I was going out every single weekend. I'd go out on a Friday night, we'd get to the club about 10 and I'd leave the club 4 or 5 in the afternoon on Sunday. It was what I lived for. The whole week I was living for going out, waiting for going out. And the other bits I just had to do, like work I had to do to pay for myself going out.
I loved clubbing, absolutely loved it. I was really into my hard house music as well. And we used to wear really crazy clothes, UV, makeup, UV, everything. And we'd just go out there and dance constantly all night. And with the ecstasy, it gives you that adrenaline as well, so you've got more energy to dance and you don't care what you look like, you're just really going for it. And, you know, at the time, it feels really amazing, it really does.
You can't predict the effect a drug will have on you, as drugs affect different people in different ways.
Take a small amount if you're not used to it, see what the effects are. Make sure that you're in a safe place with people around you who are friends and that will look after you if there are any problems. Generally, people have a sense of when things aren't quite right and you need to respect that. So if one of your friends says to you, I'm not feeling right, or, you know, I think I'm going to have a bad trip, or whatever it is, if you, as a friend, can come and talk to them, take them to one side, sit down with them and just say, it's OK, we're here, don't worry, the effects are going to wear off.
One of the most common problems with all drugs is simply doing too much.
The police had come into my school and told me, oh, you get mental problems with cannabis, this, that and the other. But it's not good just telling people they get mental problems with cannabis. You've got to tell them what happens in their mental problems. They didn't tell me I'd hallucinate. They didn't tell me I'd hear voices. They didn't tell me I would have a continuous shake, a continuous, fear. But it's something I found out.
Dan now lives with his girlfriend, Jo. They've been together since they were 15. Dan's been a very heavy cannabis user for most of this time.
As soon as I opened my eyes, I'd sit in bed sort of thing and roll a joint and sit there, smoke that one, put it out. I'd get up, I'd have a wash, come down, start rolling another joint, light that up, start getting dressed, smoking at the same time sort of thing. So that's 2 I'd had before I got out the door. Sometimes I used to do a couple of bongs as well. I used to have a bong set up for in the morning and I used to do about 3 or 4 goes on the bong. I'd get on the bus, sometimes I'd smoke a joint on the bus. I'd get to school, I'd do the same thing. I would have had about 2, 3 joints by now, I'd be pretty stoned. And it just got to a stage where I actually realised I couldn't do nothing without it.
At first I found it quite fun because it was a new thing. But I used to smoke it and drink it at the same time and it used to always make me ill. I couldn't really see why anyone could get addicted to it because it wasn't, for me, it wasn't that good. Whereas with Danny, had to have it.
All I was doing was smoking this substance and not knowing what it was doing until it was too late, really, until I had some big problems come up.
An experienced marijuana taker will tell you that it's the first smoke that gets you the most stoned. If you carry on smoking over days and days, instead of getting a kind of a giggly kind of buzz that a lot of people get when they're stoned, it goes more into kind of a mental sludginess. Why? Well, I'll tell you. Cannabis, unlike most other drugs, is fat-soluble. It seems to dissolve into the brain and it hangs around in the brain a long time after the drug has stopped working. Whereas people who are sensible when they're using cannabis, smoke it occasionally, they retain much more of that giggly, stony, eat the fridge and have a laugh kind of effect. Bottom line with cannabis, if you're going to use it like Granny uses sherry, you know, at weekends when the vicar comes round kind of thing, you know. Occasional dabbling, and that's the rule for all drugs, occasional dabbling is much more fun than doing it day in, day out.
Drugs can make you feel invincible and on top of the world. Unfortunately, this isn't always a good thing.
I just put myself in so many dangerous situations, particularly with blokes, I think, in clubs. I was absolutely convinced that I loved this complete stranger and this complete stranger loved me and connected with me in such a way. And it was all false, really. It was all the drugs. And, you know, if I'd looked at that situation sober, I would have acted totally differently, you know.
Drugs can massively change the way you behave, and you can quickly go from having the night of your life to feeling pretty low.
I could either be really, really depressed and crying for hours and hours, or having panic attacks, or I'd get really, really angry and I'd start like smashing things up, kicking in windows, and I haven't really got an explanation for like that behaviour because it's just not in my nature. I became this aggressive, hard person, you know, and I'd start fights with people for no reason. So it really did have quite a major effect on me.
Drugs always work in your brain. That's what they're doing. They're working your brain. The possibility for paranoia to kick in is always going to be there. So for your own sake, be with people you trust so that you're going to, you know, guarantee yourself the best vibe that you can get.
Let me give you an example. You drop a tab of acid at a party, right? A fight breaks out. You're sitting at the top of the stairs and you're listening to the fight going on downstairs, and there's red flashing lights coming from the music in the living room. And what are you doing? You're sitting on the chasm at the edge of hell, and you can hear the screaming sound of people being burned slowly by Satan. And that's what's going through your head. Not surprising. You call the police, there's 999. Next thing you know, you're in an ambulance coming to someone like me, completely psychotic. Same person, same drug, field with his best mate. They've had a lovely little picnic, maybe half a glass of wine, sun shining, lambs hopping around. Drop the same tab of acid, you're in heaven.
All the world in one grain of sand, and I blown it.
I can sort of describe it to you. You've got a really bad flu, where I'd probably start getting it on a Sunday night, and then it would probably be gone by the Wednesday night.
Whenever you take a drug, if you take cocaine or ecstasy or anything like that, then what you're actually doing is you're releasing chemicals from your brain that you have. But that's not extra to what you've got. That's basically what you've got in your brain, and you're going to have to wait for your body to rejuvenate and to replenish. So that's why you get the come down, is very much because your body is needing to, you know, put back what you've used.
You may not realise it's a come down. You may think your job's rubbish. You may think your colleagues are just being really annoying, and you don't realise that some of that is connected to you. So don't think that when you do something on Saturday night, bang, that's it, done.
The more drugs you take, the harder the come down's likely to be. And it's not just about feeling crap the next day.
You know, I sold possessions and stuff to get drugs or drink, but everybody else was holding down jobs, holding down relationships. As I said, I think I just overdid it.
At the peak of his drug taking, Graham was still living at home with his mum, dad and sister. He'd always been the rebellious one.
I'd say I was maybe 13, 14, holding my pet rabbit, Snowball. I was probably not sweet and innocent. It was quite disruptive at school, but I've always been quite good at putting a front on, so to people that didn't know, I probably was quite sweet and innocent.
Graham's lifestyle gradually wore his parents' hospitality out.
Mum and dad quite hard jobs, and there I was, sort of living the party life, if you want to call it that. I think that was definitely one of the contributing factors to, you know, them deciding that they wanted me to move out. Basically homeless. I mean, I started off sort of sofa surfing a little bit, mate sofas and stuff. But after a while, it did literally get to me being on the street.
A lot of the drug debate tends to focus on the acute, spectacular effects of the drug, the reefer madness, the person going crazy on acid or ecstasy or whatever. The truth of the matter, though, is that the real dangerous effects are much more pernicious and much more bland and boring than that. Being stoned or drunk or zonked all the time and being kind of monged out and not getting on with your life is a much more serious problem than just being off of your face at a party. And it's that steady effect over time that erodes at your schoolwork, your qualifications, your performance in job interviews, your relationships, your money earning, just living life, you know. And that's that subtle gnawing, sucking your soul out of you effect that drugs really have. But that doesn't get talked about as much.
Graham's love of the good time meant that all his energy was focused on the weekend, and the rest of his life slowly disintegrated.
I didn't work really when I was actually on the street, so I didn't have enough money to actually go out clubbing. So every bit of money was going on basically either alcohol or cannabis. It was like blocking out what my life was, which obviously wasn't good. So, getting stoned or getting drunk was blocking out what my life was like.
Graham slept on Epsom Common for almost a year.
I had plenty of cuts and bruises and scrapes and things, just like kind of walking into things. Literally, as soon as I got here, I'd just find somewhere that was kind of comfy, and 2 minutes later I'd be out. It was one morning I woke up. I can't remember what time of year it was, but it was cold every single morning. Doesn't matter whether it was winter or summer, it's still freezing and you'd be shivering. And I had 2 slugs on my head, and I felt like the dirt that they, obviously where slugs are meant to be, crawling along the dirt, and that's what it made me feel like, having the slugs on my head. And I just thought, all right, that's it. I've really got to change now.
Dan's parents divorced when he was very young, and he smoked weed partly due to stress.
I wasn't doing it to look cool or nothing. It was just to treat my feelings. It was like a proper case of self-medicating. I didn't feel good, I didn't behave well. The things that happened when I was brought up, they shouldn't have happened, and I shouldn't have seen them. So, because I did see them, and I got like vivid memories and stuff like that, vivid like flashbacks. So it was just a way to instantly get rid of that.
I mean, there's no safe way of taking drugs, but if your life's out of balance, then actually drugs can have a more detrimental effect on your life.
Being unhappy, being very, very anxious or insecure, underconfident, having experienced a lot of abusive experiences in your earlier life, a family history of psychotic illness, or a previous history of paranoid, heebie-jeebie type reactions to cannabis and stimulants. Those are the warning signs, and those are the people, those people who are living crap lives very often, who need to be very, very careful when taking drugs. And ironically, surprise, surprise, those are the people that end up taking drugs the most.
That bedroom with the black was sort of like my zone. At that time, the black was what I was feeling. I was feeling quite depressed and really bogged down with life and that. So I just put like words or symbols on the wall. So I used to have like on the wall and stuff like that, just me expressing me. Bad time, really, confused time where my life was just going wonky.
Dan was using cannabis to control his moods. When he didn't have any drugs, he'd get very angry.
You think to yourself, well, is it me that's making him be the way he is? Because like when he didn't have the gear, he'd say things like personal things that would like hurt you and that. And then when he got the gear, he wouldn't apologise or anything. He'd just want to get stoned, and he'd just expect everyone else to forget about it because he had.
There I can see a mini-disc player, and that mini-disc player got stamped on when my mum pissed me off one day. You lose value. I smashed up something worth 360 quid. I was being pretty disrespectful. I just, my body just couldn't take it no more. I was smoking a joint and it weren't even having no effect on me. I was, as soon as I put one out, I had another one on the go. It was just crazy, and I was putting near on like £10 of value in each spliff. 2.5 ounces a week. I couldn't even pay for that in 4 weeks, and I was smoking it in a week, so I was getting into massive amounts of debt.
If you're going to use, you need to be in control of that use. You need to do it sporadically. You don't bombard your brain. Think about it. It's just common sense.
People who use it occasionally, I would say 95% of them will experience a pleasurable transient reaction. Of those individuals, about the other 5%, there's a very unusual thing that happens. It seems that there's a very small subgroup of people with a particular gene that carries a much greater than average chance of you getting a kind of a paranoid heebie-jeebie state in reaction to cannabis. But please don't think that that vulnerable gene is the only thing that causes it. If you're smoking a lot of dope in a bad situation, there are bad vibes already in your head, it's going to do you in.
I think problematic drug use starts where people seek the high to replace the normal functioning of life. So it isn't just a Friday night out. They have the come down Monday and they have a remedy for that, which is some more of the drug. So then every day becomes the weekend, and it's a pattern of use then.
At first, drugs gave Neil a much-needed confidence boost. But it wasn't long before they just started adding to his problems.
I never thought I'd start feeling bad on it, and I did. And I used to, I don't know, I had things talk to me that weren't there. I had pictures move. I'd be sitting in my room on a Friday, paranoid. You know, I wouldn't be going out. I'd be scared to go outside. It was when TFI Friday was on, and I kind of thought Chris Evans was talking to me, and I thought the whole kind of show was set up around me, and you know, he'd be making jokes on the television, and I thought a lot of the laughter on the show was because little old Neil was stuck at home paranoid on a Friday. The more kind of paranoid I'd get on smoking hash, I'd think, you know, if I take some speed, it's going to make me confident, it's going to make me feel good. But it didn't. It ended up making things a lot worse. And I became quite hopeless. And I kind of felt that I never know how to say it, but, you know, I felt that my only option was to kill myself, really. And my dad used to take quite a few painkillers because he had arthritis. So I took all his painkillers and any other, basically all the pills in the house, and I kind of took them all. And I remember feeling really scared and just thinking, I'm going to die.
There was one night when we were together, and for some peculiar reason he did the washing up. He was obviously high on something. I just thought he was just agitated and excited about something. And then he went to bed. And it was the next morning when he woke me up and gave me a note that he had written. And I can't remember what the note said, but I mean, it was about, you know, goodbye. And I rushed him up to hospital, and yeah, I mean, I just sat outside the hospital wondering where I'd gone wrong.
For a few people, the come down from drugs can mean severe mental health problems. Neil was admitted to a psychiatric hospital after trying to kill himself when he was just 17. He'd been taking speed and smoking cannabis.
This is the hospital where I was taken in '98 when I overdosed, and it's quite mad being here, really. Appropriate word. Of just, you know, it was a horrible time in my life when I was here, really. You know, I was very lonely, very, very scared. You know, it's like my drug life had ended and I didn't feel like I had much of another life. But I did feel like it was right, me being here, really. And that made it all the worse. You know, I was a mad person. You know, I was sectioned in a psychiatric hospital, and you know, that was horrible.
It's much riskier to take drugs if you've had a difficult time. But even if you've had a great life, drugs can spell trouble.
This is when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I was living in the West Indies in Antigua, and I had a lovely childhood. I went between Antigua and London. We lived right on the beach, and I had a lovely nanny as well. He used to go swimming with me every morning. My dad used to go swimming with me every day. And it was absolutely idyllic, and it never rained. You don't have to have a horrible life to become an addict. You don't have to have a horrible life to even try drugs. You can have the most wonderful, blissful life. And I did have a lovely childhood.
Georgie's idyllic childhood faded fast as she got more and more into cocaine, and her relationship with her family fell apart.
I was awful. And it's horrible to think now how far I've come, that I was actually that person, a really not very nice person, and someone that I wouldn't want to spend time with now. And it got to the point for my mother where I'd lied so much and I'd been so cruel to my family that she asked me to make my bed. And I was coming down and I was, how dare you ask me to make my bed? You make my bed. And she just said, you either make your bed or you'll leave. So I left.
Georgie went to live with her boyfriend and kept on taking more and more cocaine.
I did have a partner, boyfriend, very cool little boyfriend, I thought at the time, who had a huge allowance, huge, and he had a fantastic flat. And we spent all his parents' money.
Spending lots of cash on drugs is just one of the signs that you may have a problem.
You don't get in hot water straight away. The water gets warm first, then it gets hotter. But what can you watch out for? Increasing amounts of the drug to get the same effect, first of all, upping your intake. Number two, the amount of time you spend on drugs. That is buying them, taking them and recovering from them, not just getting stoned itself. Number three is the drug getting in the way of things you used to love doing. Previously, there was movies, there was mum, there was telly, there was a lot of stuff going on, there was music, and now it's drugs and sometimes music, sometimes telly. And then it's drugs most of the time.
It would be quite easy, and I think this happens to a lot of people, to sort of lose, a number of years where your life doesn't have a focus, and it's kind of revolving around socialising and hanging out with friends and taking drugs, and other friends of yours have perhaps gone off to study, and you're still caught in this cycle. And, you can turn around a bit later on in life and think, what did I actually achieve through that time, and where did those years go?
Drugs can also get you into trouble with the law. Depending on what class drug you've used, you could even end up in prison. If you're having a bad come down from drugs, it might be time to stop. It's not an easy thing to do.
I was really close to my sister at the time, and I felt really bad because she was really worried about me. She'd seen me on pills and she was worried that I was going to die. And she made me promise one time that I'd never do it again, and I was like, I can't do that, I can't do that. And she's just like, if you love me, you'll give up the drugs. And I was like, I do love you, I really do. But this is my life, I can't.
Hannah was also trying to do her A-levels and really wanted to go to university, but not enough to stop her big nights out.
These are my school reports from sixth form, years 12 and 13. Due to Hannah's absences, it is very difficult to assess her progression. Hannah has not attended enough criminal psychology lessons for me to comment on her progress. High level of absences, frequent absences, estimated final grade U. I knew that I wasn't working hard enough, and I was worried that I was going to fail my exams. But to be honest, I found that clubbing was more important to me at the time, and it was like, oh, well, I'll try harder next term, but, for the moment, I'm just going to keep on going out because I'm having a good time, life's for living.
It wasn't until Hannah's life was turned upside down that she was able to change.
The thing that finally shocked me into giving up drugs was when I fell pregnant with my son. It just made me look at life totally differently and reassess my priorities. I was like, if I'm going to have this baby, I want to be the best mum that there is. And so I stopped everything right there, and that was quite a major thing, and my moods must have been awful, mixed with hormones and, But here's the best thing that ever happened to me. And if I hadn't have fallen pregnant with him, I could have gone on to harder drugs, and I might not be here now. So in a way, my baby saved my life.
When Georgie was 17, she realised she had a serious problem and needed help.
I permanently had a cold. My hair was really thin, my skin was really dry, I couldn't grow my nails. Generally, I was just a total mess. I looked in the mirror and I just didn't see back the person that I thought I looked like. I saw kind of this ruined, dead thing. And from the moment I rang my mum, how she got from Richmond to West London in 20 minutes is beyond me, I don't know. But she did, and she got me straight to the Priory, and I was very fortunate that I was able to go to such a lovely rehabilitation clinic. I was expecting, a facial and a massage, maybe a nice meal and maybe a little counselling group and, a little applause for doing it. But I didn't get that. I got 6 in the morning, get up, and, not back until 11, and kind of being retrained how to make my bed, how to look after myself, being with people and learning how to socialise, again, with people, because I didn't have the ability to do anything by the end.
You'll be exposed to a regime that's quite strict and boundaried, that brings out behaviour in you, because most drug users that get to the point where their drug use is problematic, their lives are like sort of tumbleweeds. They've got no structure, they've got no identity, they're suffering with all sorts of complicated psychological problems. So they're brought back into a structure with real clear counselling techniques, group work, and you're bringing up some painful stuff possibly. So it's a very tough time, and it's a long process, treatment. Some programmes are 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, depending on the severity of your drug use.
Life at the Priory was much more demanding than Georgie had expected.
They weren't going to kind of go, right, you're better now, you can leave. It was a huge shock and revelation that it was me. And I'm like, but I'm not capable of this. There were huge amounts of relapses when I got out of the Priory because it wasn't a magic wand. I'd have a glass of champagne and I'd think, well, I don't want any more. Maybe I can do the same with a line of Coke. So I'd have a line of cocaine, the next thing you know, it's 24 hours later and I've done 5 grams. So for me, it's just a vicious circle. And another thing that's a real shame, if I had just come across drugs and, recreationally used like a lot of my friends, they're able to go to dinner parties now and go clubbing and drink and take drugs and it not be a problem. As I can't do that now.
I really know how it feels to be stressed out.
Admitting you've got a problem with drugs is the first hurdle to getting over them.
If your friends tell you you're using too much, they're probably right, but it's quite hard to hear it. And it can make you feel a bit isolated, and then that kind of becomes a trigger, a reason to keep using. It can be quite daunting to initially go, oh, actually, I probably am using too much of something, and then to find out where to go.
It was hard, because I was trying to do the best thing, but my body let me down. My brain was telling me that you do need it, you can't not stay away. It just had to stop. It had to stop, although I was too weak to do it myself.
If you get to that point where you do think, I'm using too much and this is a bit of a problem, there are a number of places that you can go. It might be that you'll go somewhere and it won't necessarily be the right place for you straight off, and that's okay. But it's about finding as many options as possible and different types of support.
If you have a problem with drugs, you may have to be persistent to get the support you need. Dan was lucky to find help at Involve in Surrey.
I was given this by my drug counsellor, and it was specifically for a couple of weeks, just writing how much I was smoking, when I was smoking it. Started filling it up and all that, and eventually she just said, time to reduce. You don't have to have a whole joint, you could have half a joint. So that's why I started having half a joints here and there and finishing it off later on when I fancied it. And it goes all the way through, and it has all reduction through it until you get to the end, which is like finally finished, like smoking cannabis.
To get rid of a drug is one problem, out the way, done. What do you do next? You had all your friends based around drugs. Your habits were about drugs, so you've got to get new habits. Maybe you've got to get new friends. Maybe if it's got too bad and you're in trouble with dealers, you need to move to a different area. So when you start to get to a point where drugs are taking over, you've got to realise it's more than just the drug. Your whole lifestyle is going to need changing and looking at. And that's a big thing to ask somebody, and it's not easy to do. And if you can do that, that makes you a very, very strong person.
With my drug cancer, I got to a stage where I wasn't using. I'd come completely off it in such a short time. It was quite amazing how I turned my life around. I didn't know how I'd done it, and I don't know how it got so good so quick. I had to give up drugs, but I had to fill it with something positive.
With help from Kim, his drugs counsellor, Dan found a place at college to study motorbike mechanics.
I liked it because it was practical. I was never very good reading and writing, and especially after like the cannabis use, you can't be bothered to write. You want to have an easy life sort of thing. It got me back up on my feet and got me back into reality. That was the main thing really, just coming back to reality of not sitting on your arse all day.
Neil's not used drugs for years now, but it's taken a long time to adjust to everyday life.
I do regret going through those things, but I think also, you know, having come through it and kind of seeing the other side, I appreciate things a lot more. I suppose I like these pictures because they're normal pictures, and they're actually both at a lake I went to in Birmingham. Caught my biggest ever carp, which is about £18, I think, which I'm quite chuffed about. And that's just a nice kind of peaceful picture. Normally, my experience of the countryside was finding a tree somewhere with my mates to sit and smoke a load of hash, or freaking out from taking acid. Whereas there, you know, I'm just sitting, enjoying things. And it's quite cool.
Trying drugs is a complicated story. There's fun to be had and some big pitfalls to avoid. But in a world where drugs are everywhere, it's a decision everyone's got to make for themselves.
The social circles that I mix in, there aren't actually any drugs that I know of. I mean, if there are, they're keeping it under wraps.
All that doing it to extent every day, taking hardcore drugs, just mess you up.
I don't know, being younger and that, I thought running around in the park and stuff like that was more interesting than just sitting there smoking a spliff.
So look at Whitney Houston. Fiended, she's catted right about that. She's gone again. And she had bare money. She's selling things now.
To take LSD or ecstasy and actually see dragons and stuff, I'd die. I couldn't do it personally.
It will just damage your brain cells and things like that. And in this day and age, you don't want to be stupid because you need to be smart to get anywhere.
Yeah.